Humankind reached the height of its prosperity until Anthrasax, the demon god, suddenly appeared to destroy the world and engulf everything in darkness. Everyone went into despair until suddenly, Dark Schneider and his dragon knight emerged from a pillar of light and defeated the demon god. 400 years later, the world technology went backward and we find Lucian in the kingdom of Metallicana. He's a little boy who cries in fear as the Dark Rebel army approaches the castle. The Dark Army enters the castle and starts the attack. Lucian tries to save Yoko, but he is hit in the head. Yoko starts to cast a ritual spell and leans in to give it the final touch, a virgin's kiss. Lucian's body emits dark energy and transforms into the evil and powerful Dark Schneider. Schneider revels in his own glory, immediately itching to kill Gio, the great priest responsible for sealing him in Lucian's body, and also Yoko's father. 15 years ago, Schneider attacked the Metallicana kingdom and killed Sheila's brother while casting his reincarnation spell. The great priest sealed him in his baby's body, expecting to unseal him and make him work for the kingdom when it was needed. However, demons charge at him and he obliterates a massive horde within seconds with a spell. Schneider takes out their leader swiftly with a powerful killing spell, and Sheila tries to thank Schneider, but he walks over toward Yoko and then disappears. Later, Schneider reveals to Yoko that he plans to get revenge on her father and then start a war to conquer the world. He kisses her and subsequently turns back into Lucian while having no memory of the events that took place as Schneider. The next day, Yoko and Lucian head to the castle where Gio tells the king and Sheila that there are signs of Anthrasax's upcoming resurrection. Gio is interrupted by a Hydra going rampage and realizes that another sorcerer is stirring up trouble. Yoko performs the ritual and Schneider is awakened. Schneider sees Gio and prepares to fight by summoning the war golem that he used in the war 15 years ago. Suddenly, Kevijubu arrives at the castle while standing on his Hydra. Schneider beats Kevijubu in seconds and now wants to kill Gio with the golem. Yoko stops him by clinging to him and begs for Lucian to come back. Schneider explains that Lucian and him are two sides of the same soul, and kisses her to reseal himself within Lucian. Gio confirms that everything is a sign that someone is attempting to release the demon god Anthrasax. Dara, one of the rebel 4 heavenly kings, breaks into the kingdom to find Schneider and ties Yoko to the wall. Suddenly, Schneider awakens within Lucian's body to speak to Gara, but the priests burst into the room and prompt Gara to make a swift exit carrying Yoko. Schneider is later fully awakened by Sheila to save Yoko, but he tells her doesn't care about Yoko. Sheila gives a hard slap and tells Schneider about her complete disappointment. Schneider ends up agreeing, and on their expedition to save Yoko, they come upon the front gate, and Schneider casts an explosive spell to break the barrier break. A Minotaur appears, and Schneider sacrifices the soldiers while climbing some stairs with Sheila on his shoulders. They encounter a Suzuki Dojimon, a creature that could only materialize before them if dimensions were crossing paths. Schneider casts spell after spell, but fails to kill it. Sheila runs behind the monster and brings down its defense barrier. Schneider is able to cast Sodom and slice the Dojimon into chunks. Sheila and Schneider end up in a chamber where Sheila sees a sword and grabs it, but she cannot control the sword and poisons Schneider. She sucks the poison out of Schneider's wound, but the demon god Efreet awakens from the sword. Schneider is faced with an opponent that uses the same type of magic as him at a much higher level. He ends up being encapsulated in flames with Sheila. She suggests a cold spell, and he immediately shuts it down. Efreet laughs at the absurdity of this, and decides to use this weakness to his advantage. Schneider uses his magic to cast Exodus and charges Efreet, amplifying the heat to burn through the fire god. Efreet's body bursts through the wall and into the area with the rest of the ninjas, who remark that even Gara couldn't tame the fire sword that Schneider now wielded. Schneider blasts through a wall with the sword, revealing Gara with Yoko in his arms. Gara taunts Schneider, who can't seem to focus on anything other than the fact that Gara saw Yoko naked before him. Gara unsheathes the Murasama blade and sends slices through the air, blowing Schneider through a wall. Schneider manages to keep the fight within close range, but gets pushed back by Gara. He throws down his sword and begins casting venom. Gara closes the gap between them as Schneider is finishing his spell and slices Schneider's arm off. He still manages to finish casting the spell to destroy Gara's arm. Gara decides to tell Schneider how he defiled Yoko, despite the majority of what he said being lies. Schneider becomes angry and begins casting another legendary spell, while Gara sends a Shin Majinkan spell through the ground faster than the speed of sound. He blocks this attack and finishes his spell to obliterate the entire castle. Gara and Schneider bicker at each other underneath all the rubble, bonding before remembering that they need to find the remaining companions. At the same time, Gara decides to let them know that Metallicana is being currently attacked. Schneider visits his former companion Arshes with an illusion spell and tries to manipulate her before she blasts his image away with a lighting spell. Lars, Gara's dragon companion, pokes at Schneider for messing up his play to win over Arshes. They encounter a woman running away from a giant arachnid. Schneider burns it up and catches a talisman flying up from the ashes. The woman then offers to take them to her mansion to thank them. Schneider gorges himself at the mansion, and the woman asks him if he's fighting in the war on Metallicana. He brushes it off and retreats to his chambers after dinner. Later, the girl comes into Schneider's room and offers herself to him. As Schneider is about to go down, another arachnid appears in his back. The woman reveals herself as one of the 3 sorcerer generals, Sean Ari, and reveals that Arshes is aiding her. Schneider then reveals that he cast an illusion spell before Sean could even stick the talisman on him. In the next morning, before Schneider leaves, Sean tells him about another assassin sent to kill him who received some powerful magic from Arshes. Schneider parts away and immediately encounters the other assassin. It's a pretty boy commanding a horde of orcs. Schneider obliterates the orcs. The assassin rushes right away and slashes Schneider into pieces, but he simply uses illusion to avoid it. Schneider uses Efreet to blast the assassin and his clothes away, only to find out that it's a girl named Kai. Kai casts Talas, an ancient spell that slowly turns Schneider's entire body to stone. She then casts Dio to shatter him to bits. However, Sean Ari saves Schneider by throwing another arachnid talisman in front of the blast. She defends him, saying that his power can be useful to them. Kai refuses, and Sean throws more talismans in Kai's way. Kai finishes all 4 in seconds and declares she will kill both Schneider and Sean. Unfortunately, Kai accidentally reveals the name of the god which was binding the stone curse, allowing Schneider to break out. Kai attempts to cast Talas again, and Schneider gloats about how her god is like a little baby compared to his god. He casts Rainbow, sending a flurry of blazing shards raining down upon Kai. Kai summons a cicatrice to turn him into stone and sprays petrifying gas towards Schneider and Sean. The wind changes direction and sends the gas back at Kai's way. She tries to run away and drops the crystal. It shatters on a rock, making the cicatrice go into berserk mode. But Schneider simply casts Dam to implode it. Kai tells him to kill her, or she'll come back in the future to take his life. Schneider commends her skills and saves her from the cockroach poison. Kai then warns him about the 3rd sorcerer, who is the strongest of the 3. On his way over, Schneider suddenly turns back into Lucian and looks for Yoko. Lucian finds Yoko, but they're soon attacked by a werewolf who wants to take Yoko away. Suddenly, Schneider, still in Lucian's form, starts to bully the werewolf and drags his face to the ground. Schneider does some serious damage to the wolf, who ends up spilling his motives to take Yoko away. The wolf reveals that the Count is trying to become powerful enough to kill Arshes and call Sue. Suddenly, Count Diamond jumps down and captures everyone. In Diamond's lair, Schneider is caged to the ceiling, while Yoko, Sean, and Kai are captured. Diamond wants to suck their blood to increase his power. Diamond claims that his power will double if he drinks Sean's blood, and chases her around until Yoko kicks his face. But the Count kicks her away. Schneider, enraged, releases himself from the cage and faces Diamond. He casts Riot, one of the few spells that can harm vampires, but Diamond doesn't seem to be phased and uses his special move, Assassin. The Count shoots lasers from his eyes to destroy Schneider's body, and laughs as he thinks about sucking the girl's blood. But Schneider is still alive and behind him, laughing at the same time. Diamond performs his rotating assassin eye laser beams. Schneider steps forward to defend and blocks Diamond's spell with his hands, then uses the same power to feed his spell and destroys the wall behind the Count, who turns into ashes after getting hit by the sunlight. But soon, Diamond rises from the ashes as a bat. Diamond taunts them from above until Schneider knocks him down a clothesline and rips off some bat skin to perform the accused spell, a spell that makes the Count become Schneider's slave. He will die and reincarnate as a toad if he ever disobeys his master's orders. Schneider and Yoko head back to Metallicana in a carriage. As soon as they get there, Schneider destroys the main bridge to stop Arshes from killing Gara. Arshes approaches him and Schneider tries to seduce her. She nearly falls into his grasp but falters, calling her Griffin to fly off for the time being. Gara and Schneider chit-chat, and Gara warns him about Arshes again. Gara emphasizes the fact that 15 whole years have passed, and Schneider doesn't know her as well as he thinks he does. Later in his room, Schneider laughs at Sheila's belief in the fortune teller, who saw him with his heart ripped out on the battlefield. However, he tells Sheila that they were right all along, that he always just wanted to rule the world. He promises her to take back the rebel army and kill anyone in his path. As Schneider gets closer to kiss Sheila, Yoko bursts into the room and tosses Lars between them, turning Schneider's head to see the brewing storm outside and hear Arsh's voice casting the Megadeth spell. Everyone survives after Schneider casts a shield over them. He decides to face Arsh's as she flies in. Schneider casts Raven, a flying spell, as Arsh's creates a lighting ball that absorbs all nearby magic. Schneider plummets to the ground, and Arsh's launches herself downward to strike with the Ragingkin. He tries to cast Guns and Roses, but the spell gets sucked up into the void. Just as Schneider is about to die, Efreet flies over and presents himself to Schneider. Schneider and Arsh's charge each other, and they cross paths as Schneider slices her griffin in half. Arsh's compliments Schneider before demonstrating the superiority of her blade. The fire and thunder swirl Schneider, both blazing with energy. Arsh's moves first with a secret Hey You Can Thunder Claw strike, who tries to block with his sword. Efreet decides to knock the swords into the air and pull the Ragingkin up into another dimension. Dark Schneider loses focus, leaving himself open to a stab through the forehead from Arsh's. Efreet calls down to tell Schneider that he's won the battle, and he reincarnates underneath Arsh's. He gets up, claiming that he'll never forgive her, and they aren't family anymore. She tells Schneider that she's never seen him as a father figure, and they both leap away to cast Raven. They meet in the air and cast Riot at the same time, which bounces away. Schneider starts to cast Exodus, and Arsh's decides to counter with the same. Just before the final strike, Schneider remembers his life with Arsh's. He falters before the critical moment, and she hits him with an explosion. Arsh's mocks him for becoming so weak, since the old Schneider never would have fallen victim to his heart at the most important part of a battle. Everyone stands in shock, weighing the situation until Schneider reincarnates yet again. Everyone cheers as Schneider stands up. He yells on his strength, but is clearly wounded and gets on his knees. She approaches him, but he proclaims his love to her again. Arsh's chuckles, then screams at him that he says the same thing to every woman. She conjures thunder spirits from the wind elemental plane, and they fly into the air as Schneider conjures fire spirits. He pleads for Arsh's to stop, but she declines. When asked about the utopia she wants to build, Arsh's explains that it will be a place free of discrimination, poverty, and war, as she once fell into despair after being abandoned by her tribe. Schneider stops Arsh's punch and pulls her into an embrace, reminding her that he gave her a safe home for the past 100 years. She expresses her gratitude for this, nearly coming to kiss him once more. Her nail changes from blue to purple, the spell creeping through her veins as a warning. She shoves him back with a blast. He approaches her again, and she gives him a swift uppercut. Arsh's powers up to fight again, and Schneider takes a massive hit. He struggles to get up as Arsh's looks down upon him. She picks him up and tosses him away with one arm, hoping for him to die. But he lands on his feet and faces her again. The spirits start to roam out of control, and Arsh's aura becomes visibly chaotic with energy and sadness. They both vow to put all of their power into their next spell, Halloween. Arsh's says that she loves Schneider as the blasts connect, and they hold the spell for much longer than usual. The blast grows into a raging ball of light, and Arsh's struggles to maintain her stance. Lucian screams at Schneider, explaining that Arsh's has been cursed with accused, and she chose to die at Schneider's hand instead of turning into a toad for falling in love with him again. This is the last straw for Schneider, who knows the culprit, Abigail. Schneider directs the blast elsewhere, walks up to Arsh's, and looks at her hand. He tells her that he's going to solve her problem, and fulfills his own prophecy by ripping his heart out of his chest. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.